let's talk about Britain more broadly here for a second.
Yep.
As someone who's a little bit more politically engaged, what do you think about the direction we're going in as a nation?
I mean, Britain as it is now, I think is very scary for me, as a British Muslim, as a British Indian, as somebody who's sort of, I guess, like slightly more politically literate than, I don't know, I guess the average Joe, in the sense of I studied politics,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And I felt like it's a very polarizing time, right? Where I feel like the parties that were supposed to be the sort of two options, right?
Yeah.
You've got Labour, you've got Conservative, you've got right, and then you've got left. Both parties have kind of blended in this way where, you know, Labour in so many policies and so many sort of ways is now more right leaning to sort of appease to whoever they might be appeasing to. And the Conservative Party also losing so much support has kind of gone like kind of left leaning, not now, but like at times in their sort of run for election, it was somewhat more going towards a more liberal way to kind of retain their popularity, whatever, and in turn just alienating their voters, right? And so then, unfortunately, people like the conservative voter, the average conservative voter, will see this like liberalization of their party, and they'll be like, "This is not the party that I want to vote for," or whatever, and they look for the other option, and the other option is so far on the right that, like, you know, that you see like reforms rise, right?
Yeah.
Like it's been rapid, it's been way bigger than a lot of people would have thought. But I think that is them just, you know, being able to lap up all of those alienated conservative voters, right? And all of the people that have been, at least in my eyes, made to feel like Britain's problems are things like immigration and the sort of the different things that reform likes to sort of focus on. And so for that reason, the sort of extremities that we're going into, and especially how I feel like the extreme of the left side, let's say, it's not even extreme, the Green Party, right?
Yeah.
Their popularity is nowhere near matching the way reform is rising. I feel like Green is, you know, taking a positive trend, yes, for sure. Like they're breaking their records, but the support for them is it's not the same, you know, like
It's not as meteoric, no.
no, yeah, exactly. And that's what's really sort of nerve wracking for me is the extremities that I feel like people are swaying towards. And yeah, it's not looking good, is what I feel like.
When you see the rise of reform on the right, Restore, Green, not so much your party, but I suppose the fact that they
Yeah.
even exist.
The idea behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think we're ever gonna go back to a time where you have your Labour Conservatives who are, yes, left versus right, but there's not a million miles between them? Or do you think we're in a new era now of extremely divisive politics?
I feel like I have this I guess this philosophy that I apply to everything in my life, right?
Yeah.
Where I say that if you realize that you're on one side of an extreme, you'll go to the other side of an extreme before you find the middle, right?
What do you mean by that?
And by that I mean, like, let's say the example I usually use is, let's say if I feel like I'm being like too quiet of a person socially,
Okay.
right? I felt like, you know, I don't stand out enough in crowds or whatever. What I'll end up doing is I'll go really loud, right? And I'll go really out there in your face, and people might find that distasteful. And from that, I'll gauge how to tone it down to then be in the middle of like, I'm social enough, I'm loud enough, and all of these sorts of things. And I feel like where sort of the two-party way of doing I don't know how the bi-party way of doing it is like, it existed and now it's going to this extreme of all of these little parties, right? And it's all splitting up into these groups, and you know, you never know, tomorrow there might be another famous figure that's now got their own party or whatever, and everyone's being split. That's another extreme, right? And eventually I feel like it will iron itself out to maybe 3 or 4 more concrete options compared to the way we have had it for so long. Do I see it going completely back to the 2?
Yeah.
I don't feel like that is possible in my head, at least right now, in the way things are going. Like, you know, obviously Keir Starmer stepped down. We've had, 7 prime ministers in the span of how long?
I think it's about 10 years.
Yeah, like that's insane. Like, you know, the last person to do their full term it's been so long that, like, if it was like tomorrow, like, I feel like there is no consistency anymore. At least, you know, 7 years, 10 years has been a long time of having this many different people at the head of the country.
Yeah.
That, like, I feel like it's confusing people. It's making people feel very lost and things like that. And that's when I feel like people will jump to an extreme opinion, an extreme view. The only person that can fix this country is the person with the biggest views, and that is what pushes them out there. And I feel like it will take some time for it eventually to come back into a more reasonable place. But I'm from London, right? So London has a very particular political environment. I'm
Yeah.
from East London. I went to a very liberal uni, if anything, a socialist uni, where like I'm surrounded in my very left leaning bubble where I felt like Green was going to win everything. And I was like, yeah, like, Green Party for the win. They won it in my borough. Like,
You can get caught up in the hype.
yeah, exactly. I got caught up in the hype, and people thought that they were going to have some. I mean, people being some of the people I knew thought it was going to be some like landslide Reform versus Green or whatever. And the media made you think that too, right? They thought like they made sort of Zach Palante look like the biggest
Yeah.
sort of baddie, or like the biggest sort of like next big thing that's coming in and it's going to change the game or whatever. And then he didn't end up doing like or like performing nearly as well as the media would want you to think that he was going to perform. And that's the thing where it's all very confusing, and it's all purposefully held behind like sort of curtains, I feel like, and only the people that are willing to sort of peer behind it, read through these articles, sort of critically think about what is BBC telling me, what is Sky News trying to tell me right now. Then you can kind of see exactly what's going on. But before that point, it is all just a mess. And you see a lot of people just choosing not to engage, right? There's so many people that just choose like, oh, that politics stuff is not for me. It's all so confusing, right? I don't feel like it was that confusing a couple decades ago. I feel like a lot of people were probably a lot more engaged in who's at the head of the state right now, who's making the decisions and all of these sorts of things. Now it feels like there's a different person making a decision every week,
Yeah.
So how much importance do I place on my vote? I don't really know, and so I get why people choose not to engage with it, because it seems so confusing, at the end of the day. But
Do you think that's a universal thing? 'Cause I feel like I do agree with you mostly, but when I look at reform now,
yeah,
at least for me, I feel like the apathy which people on that side of the far right felt seems to have disappeared, and they seem to be galvanized almost to the point where now they're out. I feel like that political apathy still exists a lot on the left, maybe a little bit less so with Green.
yeah.
But what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like for some reason, the right-wing political like pipeline is easier in some ways to go out towards a reform, right? Where the sort of changes feel way more like holistically better for what they envision as better, right? And they say the things that they want to hear is then another really big thing.
Yeah.
I feel like reform's not worried to contradict itself and say the wrong thing, because they can just go back on it, and it doesn't matter, because it reached the ears of the people that they wanted it to sort of reach, right? Whereas I feel like a Green Party voter or even a Labour voter, I feel like the Labour voter now will choose not to vote because they've lost their trust and Green stays very much solid on what they've said that they want to do, and that might not be for everybody. And so I feel like reform does this thing, and you see a lot like Trump does it all the time, where he says one thing one week and he does another thing another, but the people that heard him say that one thing that week before will have their blind support for what that was. And whether or not that actually equates to policy or change or whatever he sort of said that week before, it doesn't matter, because they sort of rally behind that figure. Nigel Farage is a figure.